welcome into the Creating a Data Utopia. All right, today we have the amazing Jasmine. We have Damar as well. I'm gonna kick it over to you guys, kind of run through some introductions. Jasmine, if you want to take it first.
Yeah. I'll share my slides now. So as Dylan mentioned, thank you for joining us for 8 steps to creating a data utopia today. My name is Jasmine Chung. I'm the Director of Demand Gen and Revenue Operations here at OpenPrice. And OpenPrice is a leader in RevOps data automation cloud, helping companies accelerate their funnel conversions and drive efficient revenue growth. And with us here, we have Damar, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, I see some familiar faces, so welcome back for those that have been around and I've seen before. But as Jasmine mentioned, I'm Senior Director of Business Operations at Zip Solutions, oversee all things sort of RevOps, BizOps. You know, we think of operations sort of very holistically across the org. So whether it's sort of something regarding our go-to-market in product or end user, I really kind of touch the the whole piece of the pie. So great to be here and excited to join the conversation today.
All right. So again, just quick housekeeping rules. The spam was selling in the chat. Keep it open, keep it free. Feel free to ask questions as we go along. If there's anything that we do not get to today, please feel free to follow up with Jasmine and Damar on LinkedIn or in the ROC itself. I will be dropping in their LinkedIns, and as always, follow up in there and then reach out to them. I know both these people very well, and they would be more than happy to help anybody here after this. So with that being said, Jasmine, why don't you kick it off?
Sounds good. So let's get to it. So from 2011 to 2023, according to Chief Martech by Scott Brinker, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with it, there has been 6,521% growth in the landscape of MarTech, which is insane. It is so crowded, and now you could barely see what the icons look like. So that just shows you what a crowded space it has been, and it's becoming even more so. Also, one Forrester analyst estimated that there are over 100,000 SaaS apps today, and there could be 1 million by 2027. And this is now being called the Great App Explosion. And really, first time in the history of MarTech, the consolidation is finally coming up in the wave of overinvesting even before being ready for the tool. Another quote that I thought was really interesting was that is all from the state of MarTech. People overestimate their ability before they invest the effort to develop the ability, which takes time and experience. Investing in a good marketing operation function can mitigate this. So I'm sure you guys have all experienced, but short-term fixes can do more harm than doing good in the long run. And people are essentially the highest cost within the organization. And keeping your house clean versus letting things pile up and then getting to it later down the road, or really sweeping the dust under the rug, is not going to do anything except you're just turning a blind eye until something majorly breaks, and then everyone is freaking out. And that really is a site of a dystopia rather than a utopia. So a little intro into the landscape of MarTech. Another quote from Chief MarTech. So make more and more business will be doing digital natives, 100% powered by kaleidoscopic tapestry apps built, brought, and rented all, interconnected through APIs in public and private clouds. And I bolded the all interconnected through APIs, which was a good segue for me to show that it's not what we just see at the top. And iceberg is probably an analogy that you guys are all very, very familiar with. When I was faced with data quality as well, this is an analogy that I use, because data quality, what you see at the top of the iceberg is not really all there is. There's so much more that lies beneath. And when I was thinking about API, I was thinking APIs are like humans. They all have different ways of receiving and sending information, and just like us humans do. So yeah, let's get to the essential building blocks of data. So number one is really to know your sources. And having shown the MarTech slide earlier, there are so many different sources, so many different APIs, different formats. So where are your data coming from? So these are the some sources that you might also have. So you could get a list from an event, from an in-person, an anchor event, virtual, content syndication, paid social, inbound, outbound. So there are various of sources, and depending on which source or where they're coming from, they're going to have different formats. So having a set handful of standard templates with the required fields versus a nice to have will be really helpful for you to be scalable, and you're not having to create a template every single time, and you just have a couple of templates ready for you to share with an external vendor, whether it's a content syndication or I mean, some places like LinkedIn, it is what it is, they will give you, but there are parts of that process you're able to also automate. And knowing which sources, I was thinking is kind of like taking your Enneagram test, learning best about how to effectively work with others and have others work with you as well. And the list of the sources that is listed here may be different because all the different companies have different sources, of course, but I just wanted to call out some. Damar, did you have any comments on the sources that you have experience with?
Yeah, I think that this is a really important one, and it goes back to sort of what you laid the foundation with, is sort of what I like to call what is commonly known as tech debt, right? The more of that sort of tech debt or sort of cobwebs that you sweep underneath the rug, the more difficult it is to sort of begin to scale and ultimately even make changes right within your existing business. So I think it starts with a firm understanding of sort of what all of that sort of tech debt might be, so that you can avoid it and kind of allow yourself to set yourself up with good foundation. And it starts with source data, being very clear, because you're going to hand that off to some point down the road, and if it's not clear to them, or if it's not clear to you and well defined to you, then something's going to get lost in that game of telephone that we all see with different systems playing against each other. So it's always important to have a good documentation with this, but also keeping it simple to start, to understand not accruing too much tech debt early that you have to dig out of.
Absolutely. Yeah, once that pile gets too crowded, it is daunting to try to fix it after the fact. So definitely using the house analogy of keeping everything clean from the get-go and maintaining our physique, our body, our lifestyle, and the whole balance is so important, not just for our professional but personal level. So digging a little deeper into the sources, here are some of the samples of the sources that you may be familiar with, that you have seen, and again, interconnected through the APIs. So here are some, but not all, that you might have seen for your marketing automation or CRMs to pull the data, but the format is going to be different across all. So the second step would be to work on the formatting. So some things to consider is field type, length, data parts, allow values, and international data. As some of you guys may know, in Salesforce, there is a 40 character limit versus 131,000. And some fields in Salesforce doesn't really exist in Marketo. For example, like the multi-select, that exists in Salesforce, but Marketo's, you just see it as a string with the semicolon. So there are differences in the field type, length. So these are all areas that you should look out for. Damar, do you have any past experience on format and how it got kind of crazy along the way?
So with data compatibility, right, it can throw off an entire import or export of data by simply having one field type incorrectly formatted, right? So you want to take data from your, an existing kind of source system, and you want to pump it into, a Salesforce report using, or Salesforce, kind of workflow using the data loader or another sort of format to get that into Salesforce, but you have a decimal in the wrong place, or you have something formatted in the text or in the columns as custom, and it needs to be formatted as as a number type. Those little details can cause headaches in just workflows, in automated processes, manual process across the board. So understanding your data is obviously the most important thing, so that you understand how to bug fix, right? Because we do a lot of these manual or automated imports that are very dependent on the systems understanding each other, right? You can only feed something that understands, it's just data at the end of the day. So as long as the metadata is clear and understood, I think you have a fighting chance of getting to different business systems to communicate effectively.
Yeah, and along the lines, you just kind of triggered my PTSD. There was a field where it was being automated and generated, and Marketo kept trying to push some sort of data that was from an external vendor into that field. So the system was like, no, we're not doing that, but it was on a constant feedback loop. And then it was eating up the API, and we were going over exceeding the API, and which costs more money, more headache, more time, your team's time, and just getting to the bottom of it gets insane, and it just kind of burns people out in both budget, the time, and all aspects. So definitely understanding your data, where it comes from, how it's set up is very important, to your point. So moving on to the third step. Okay, so once you have the data formatted, you will want to correct it. So this is like the traditional data cleaning or hygiene to make your data more current, valid, and deduplicated. And we'll go into another section about dedupe, but just a couple of insights that you could do in order for you to correct the data before all the rest happens after. So inferring the data, this is something that isn't talked about so much, but what information do you have in your first party? And I'm going to go back to the human analogy. When I thought about it, first party data is like, knowing yourself more about your strength and weakness, because that is your first party. You get to know what you have first. So for example, if you have an email domain, you can figure out the website from that. If you have email format, then you could find other contacts within the company. If it's like first dot last name, or if you have a job title, you could also find out the job function, sub-function, and the role. Also, if you have an area code or a postal, then you could easily find out the state and city, because when you use the information that you already have, then you're spending less money on enrichment later down the road. So definitely using the information that you have before going outside is something that I think a lot of companies kind of miss or oversee, but there's a lot more to what you have than what meets the eye. So Damar, did you have any quick comment on that?
Yeah, I find this really useful, because I think when you're thinking about stuff like intent data, things like that, it's hard to sort of really isolate down to who a person is, or behaviorally where that action's coming from. But using some of these inferences, you can start to make easier connections to those actions by way of kind of critical thinking, but sometimes there's technology that can allow you to connect those dots a little bit more readily. I know there's restrictions around that kind of stuff with GDPR, and there's obviously things you want to be mindful of there, but it's easier to deduce these things when you have things like this to consider. And I think this is an important thing to identify, that you may have more information than you actually think you do by way of inference.
Yeah, definitely agree. And with the whole cookieless world that has been getting pushed back and back, it's better to prepare for that now, using your first party data rather than relying on external. So step number 5 would be append and enrich. So once you know the skills or traits that you have, you can now go acquire the new ones that you want to. And some things to consider is how often would you want to enrich your database? What should be updated versus left alone? Because you definitely don't want to update every single one. And which vendor has better data? And as you mentioned with GDPR, Castle, and other compliances, outside of US or I mean Canada, California, it's getting even harder to know which enrichment vendor excels at one thing versus other, especially when you go to like EMEA or APAC and we're not really familiar with the language or with their data provider. It's really hard to know what they're good at because we unfortunately can't be good at everything, and we do kind of have a specialty, and a lot of the list vendors do as well. So using an approach like the waterfall method and not locking yourself in one contract for you to enrich your data, for you to have the most holistic and complete data, first using your infer data, and then so you save the cost as well for you to find the rest of the puzzle pieces that you're looking for, will be definitely recommended. Damar, do you have any stories on enrichment?
Yeah, this is one that I'd love to throw out, maybe even a question out to the larger group. The concept of sort of enrichment comes up a lot in this sort of age of the Great Resignation, right? I deal with my sales reps oftentimes, wondering, how can we stay as dynamic as we possibly can on, a Zoom info update or, a LinkedIn Sales Navigator enrichment, service, because people are constantly changing, changing jobs now, and you want to make sure that that information is up to date. So one question that I might pose to the group is, when a contact leaves an organization, how do you handle that within your CRM, right? Is that person become a checked as no longer at that account person and still alive within the account record, but maybe deactivated? Is that become a new person that's unique to your CRM because all emails are unique and so therefore all people? Or is that person, like Sales Navigator goes, one continuous record throughout, and their history, or their work history is then appended, as they go? So I'd be curious, how are you handling that across your orgs, within the chat, and have you seen best practices that work better than others?
And to add to Damar's question, if you guys are using any movers solution, like either from ZoomInfo or any other companies, we would love to know what solution you're using to track all those movers. I'm definitely curious about that. So while some of the questions may come in, we could just forge ahead. So step 5 would be to normalize and standardize. And a couple things to consider and look out for is scalability. And depending on the size of your database, if you have like 1 million to 2 million, it may not be as scalable as something more manageable. So taking a look at the size of your database, how much it has grown over year would be good. The variability, the typos, abbreviations, the variations are really endless. I'm sure you guys all have been there where you have an open text field, people either put like A or Mickey or something foul just because they're trying to be funny and they're really not. So the whole variation are endless, unless it's a pick list. But we all know with the pick list, it is a little boxed in, and you don't have as much flexibility. And then lastly is manageability, and how much configuration. If you have 500 plus rules for each company and state, it's gonna be hard to manage long over down the road. And with all of that, your system performance may slow down. So definitely looking out for all of these while looking to normalize and standardize will be a solid way to go. Damar, do you have any comments on past normalization and standardization?
Yeah, this one's always a kind of a hot topic within our sales team, our marketing team, because now that we're in a place, a world now where there's more layoffs happening, people's email, because we're in the camp that we limit to business emails for form submissions, so that we're not, getting all these Gmails and Yahoos and whatever. But then now that we're in this, this transition period where a lot of people maybe don't have their business emails, and or they're using their personal email to sort of sleuth and check out different products out there. It can be a little bit of a tricky dynamic to limit those and remove those people from the population when they could be solid leads of people that are just kind of personally tracking, and that's part of their buyer cycle. So I'm kind of on the fence with this one of limiting certain emails and standardizing there. I do think that there are things across fields like phone number and even just having a valid email address there outside of tracking to specific domains that can help with this. But it all comes down to how if you have a big problem with lead quality, there are certain strategies I'm sure that you can implement to increase your manageability and scalability there. But if it's a situation where you're suffering for leads and you maybe want to increase the volume there, maybe you open that site a little bit wider.
Yeah. One place that we've seen a lot of personal email come through is LinkedIn, because I'm sure you as well and me, we use our personal email to be connected to LinkedIn. So if you run a paid social with like LinkedIn lead gen, then we do get a lot of the personal email. And then trying to match that could be pretty difficult. But
that's our biggest, that's like, we had something like 200 to 300 lead forms from LinkedIn last month, and 90% of them were personal email. So again, same problem where those don't play nice with our Salesforce environment because they're personal emails and they break the validation rules there. But again, those are all people that look like good leads, coming in from LinkedIn.
Yeah. How did you guys handle those? The ones from LinkedIn that was personal email?
We actually had our sales reps personally validate each, that list, so that they could, whether they were people in their target accounts or people in their, their patch, they could go in and make that one-to-one connection with their business email, so that they would get brought over. But it's still something that we're working to optimize as well, because it's a tricky one with LinkedIn forms being less flexible there with the information that because you obviously want to drive the ease, right? And the form fill aspect of it, where they can just easy fill it, makes the the numbers go up. But then again, you're pulling in personal emails. So it's something that I'd love people's opinion on.
Yeah, manual tasks can be very mundane, but some situations or scenarios like these, it is definitely worth the manual effort from the sales teams. So moving on to step 6, this is a hot topic. They deal with deduplication. I'm sure you guys have all seen and faced data doppelganger. And some things to consider is data ownership. If you have multiple contacts and they are in multiple sales reps, there ought to be kind of a fight between, hey, that's mine, why this is my territory. So the data ownership can get messy with dupes, of course. Which system to dedupe against, data verification rules, bad data, businesses process that might interfere, which data fields to use for dedupe key, determining the surviving records. If you're a marketer or even sales ops or anybody in operations, I'm sure you guys have done the merge and comparing the columns side by side. Which one do I choose to be a surviving record? And oftentimes, like in Salesforce, for example, yes, there is a lead to lead dedupe based only on email, and they have to match exactly. But what about accounts? What about contacts and all the other objects that it doesn't have out of the box dedupe for? And manual dedupe is literally the bane of our existence. We spend so much of our time and of our lives working, and if all you were doing and deduping and trying to figure out which part of the record should be surviving or not, I'm sorry. You should come talk to us, because we can help you. And there are better worlds out there to a more utopia data world. And as Damar mentioned, with the current economic circumstances, definitely less people, less hands, less resources, and people being the highest cost. There are better ways than overpaying on your marketing automation based on the record that are dupes and really not really worth paying for. And then as well as, of course, your employee, your coworker, your team's happiness. Demar, I'm sure you have a story about how
yeah,
you
yeah. So going back to sort of the like, and this is sort of like a question, maybe it would be an additional bullet point, right? Because if that, going back to my scenario of a person leaves and they exist in your CRM and they have an email address that is attached to, you know, their previous employer, is that a net new person if they fill out a demo request or they come in as a new lead and they get converted? Because it's not going to look for that net new match according to their old email address, right? It's not going to do enough of a fuzzy match to identify that as the same person. So is that the same person, or is it an all new person altogether because it's a, you know, and I think that I haven't seen a standard across revenue operations, sales operations, marketing operations that everyone believes is best practice. So I wish we could define one, because if that was easy, right, then, you know, that surviving person would be much easier to distinguish. You don't want to lose all the history of that contact, right? Of, you know, history or whatever. So purging them from your database may not be the best idea. But again, you don't want to overpay for people that aren't in the system and or that you aren't using your marketing to, and you don't want sales reps in there having to delineate or, you know, differentiate, is this contact the one I should be calling, or you know, or this one, two John Smiths with the same, you know, same email, different, you know, different companies.
Yeah, I would also love to know how others are dealing with them as well. And pre Open Prize, I just thought about my past life where we had a lot of dupe problems. I literally Googled, you know, data deduplication tool. And there are so many standalone tools just to really patch the hole for that short run. But oftentimes when you are trying to patch a hole for a specific use case or challenge that you are faced with right now, there may be some implications that come later down the road that you may not be thinking of. So really thinking about it and approaching it from a holistic view and strategy definitely is the way to go in order for you to save time and have a better result in the long run. So, okay, so after deduping and your data is at a good place, marketers, we love segmentation, and this can be done quite easily if you have the right tools. And it really helps you to be more personalized and ultra focused. And some of the common fields that you can segment are job levels. So if you're targeting like executive versus practitioner and you have separate tracks for them, different personas, for example, like marketing operations, sales ops, revenue operations. I mean, it's a Venn diagram, but we all focus on different parts of the business. So thinking about which persona, or of course, territory or region, depending on where they reside, the language that you may send the emails, or even the format that you may get back from a different territory region may be different. So using the data that you have prepped, deduped, and it's somewhat at a close to pristine state, it can now be segmented and used for extra personalization. Demar, do you have any stories on how you've segmented and used the data effectively?
So, yeah, I think segmentation is sort of, it's appropriately placed within your presentation as like the thing that you do, right? Once you have like the actions that you can, you know, complete once you have data in a good place. But I would challenge that this almost should be the first thought as you're thinking about your data structure, because there's nothing worse than a revenue operations professional to come in and say, like, at this level, oh, can we segment on job level and not have that data point, right, to reference back to, or to have that sort of cut to go off of. So understanding how you want to potentially in the future segment the data as you're building out the foundation for the infrastructure of how you're going to cut it and whatever, almost it's good foresight to have as you're doing it. Because to me, there's nothing, like I said, worse than not being able to answer the question that you could have answered having had the right foresight. So as you're building out the initial structure, consult with the other groups in that Venn diagram of the types of personas, the types of segmentation that they may end up wanting to do, to make sure you can account for that on the front end. Because there's nothing worse than having to redo, past work to account for, future questions.
Yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, before all of this happens, I hope that every organization figure out your ideal customer profile. And within that, you go through your personas. And then from that, you also think about segmentation while you're doing all of this job. It's like trying to go somewhere knowing where you're going instead of like wandering aimlessly-ish in the right direction towards that place that you're trying to get to. So definitely agree with you. Okay, so after segmentation, operationalization, how will the data be utilized effectively? So, hold on. Sorry about that. So a couple things to consider. Of course, your team alignment, your process flow, enablement education, testing, measure, and optimization. In the world of RevOps, the people, technology, processes, and data, you definitely need a balance across all of them. And really training the right folks. If a change has been made to your marketing automation or you're part of your process, enabling your team and making sure that it is able to be operationalized. And the word operationalized may be more familiar to like marketing operations or sales operations, really operations folks who are making it come to life. Because oftentimes executives have this thought in the kind of cloud, they're like, I want to do this. And we're at the bottom here. Can that be done? How is it going to be done? Where is it going to be done? When can it be done? So really answering the who, what, when, where, why, how, and we're going to get to that a little later, but it's really up to us for us to operationalize. And testing, I mean, that's never going to go out of fashion in the world of ops in any organization. And having the right key of measurement, and of course, continuing to optimize. I mean, even as human beings, we are always working on ourselves to be the better version of ourselves. It's not that we're stagnant, and you don't want to be stagnant. You always want to be growing, like my plants back here. So continuing to optimize, learning from your test, and really sharing from one another. I mean, like the RevOps co-ops group, I love the fact that we're all learning from each other, sharing each other's stories. So doing more of that and really testing and making headway in order for you to optimize and see the goal and see the result that you all really hope for and is excited for is a key. Damar, did you want to add any comment to that?
Yeah, I mean, this slide should speak directly to the heart of, all RevOps operations kind of personnel, because it is sort of, when you think about what is RevOps, like this is it, right? The execution and operationalization of the data and the process all coming together into one, harmonious picture. So yeah, this speaks directly to the role and how you leverage the capacity internally.
Yeah. So moving on to, this is a slide of really the full funnel orchestration. And as you can see, data quality is really at the top. And that is really the foundation of everything else that's going to follow on afterwards. So without a strong foundation on data quality, enrichment is right below, and we kind of grouped it together. However, your scoring, your routing, account management, and attribution, everything following on is not going to be accurate if your foundation of data quality is not strong and it's built upon shaky or turbulent format. So just wanted to bring to attention that data quality is often an oversight, and it's really hard to quantify in order for you to either justify or get the business case. But it is such an important and crucial part of the overall business that we know that it oftentimes kind of gets swept under the rug, or people turn a blind eye, or they figure, oh, we have higher priorities. And don't get us wrong, yes, we all have really bigger priorities, bigger fish to fry. However, it is really the foundation of everything following on. So just wanting to bring the importance on how to really tackle it. And if you need help making a business case, talk to Damar and myself, and we will definitely help you to be beside you in your journey with your project. Yeah, Damar?
Yeah. I mean, Jasmine said it best. I mean, there's the adage of good data in, good data, or bad data in, bad data out, right? So that it obviously starts with that, but I would almost contend, that you left one point out there, Jasmine, of like, you can't use the data, but like, what if you're making decisions off of bad data, right? What if you're driving your whole strategy and you don't even realize that the data is bad, right? Like that is a scarier proposition to me, even than not being like, than the paralysis that comes, right, from not being able to make any decisions off the data, using making a wrong decision off of like what you thought was the right data, right? And I think that's a good one. And then obviously not, failing to keep your data maintained, right? I think, sometimes you think about it at the beginning, but with every net change you make to your data model or to your process, you got to keep up from a data quality perspective, because the worst thing to me is, when your data, there's that one thing wrong data point wise on a slide, and then it becomes the glaring mole or scar on the slide that no one can get past, right? It's like the message gets lost, everything gets lost as soon as the quality is comes to question.
Yeah. Well said, Damar. And I'm just gonna relate back to the human analogy. Like us, we work out, and some people, yes, they do have a physique goal that they're trying to achieve, but really throughout life, it is about maintaining, and that is oftentimes the hardest. And the data quality project is going to look different for every organization, for every team, depending on how your systems are set up, how your data are flowing in and out. So it's not really one size fits all, but for you to figure out the best strategy and tactic for your own business and for your team based on how everything is set up is going to be crucial. Okay, so in order for you to transform your RevOps processes, if you are at the fragmented with poor data, disconnected platforms, marketing and sales silo, which happens quite often, and manual reporting, this may be more in the dystopia. However, there is a road to more transformation. So you are GTM ready, optimized, and everyone is playing nicely with each other. You have the accurate data for you to make the data-driven decisions. And then you have, of course, the real-time reporting and forecasting. So everyone could be more data-driven, and everyone is able to progress in the right direction with the right data. Damar, did you want to add anything to this?
No, I not other than I love this chart. Can I get a copy?
Of course. Okay, so to wrap things up, we're just going to go through the who, what, when, where, why, how when starting out. So when you're starting out, work with your stakeholders, your project group, and really set expectations with yourself based on how things are, because some things may not be possible, and that's not something worth really beating yourself up for. So just set the right expectation with everybody in the who column. And what are you trying to do? I mean, document the detailed examples, as Damar mentioned earlier, diagnosis of the CRM and marketing automation, or any other tools that your data may reside in, like EDW, and really the urgency. And when is the right time to do it? So setting a reasonable timeline, because as we mentioned, data quality oftentimes kind of get pushed back because there are other priority that comes up. So when is a good time to do it? Where, which project management systems, which systems to be prioritized, which part of the process is slowing you down the most? The reasons for doing it, and if you're able to quantify it, then that would be even better for you to make that business case and for justification. And how to do it. I mean, plan the plan, document, always document, execute based on timeline. But if something slips, of course, plans change. So just set the right expectation based on the change. Test, measure, optimize, as we mentioned earlier. But these are just some tips and tricks for you to get started, and things to think about when you are starting out. And we hope this was helpful. And before we close, Damar, did you have any parting words?
No, I mean, this is one of the topics that gets, talked about a lot, sort of probably in a private forum, but doesn't make a lot of like headway in a public forum. So I'm glad we, got a chance to, dive deeper on this topic. I hope people will, chat with us offline, because I think that there's some really good topics that can come out of this as well. And hopefully, we can continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Yes, you're not alone. Just know that data quality is a very common issue and something that it kind of boggles my mind. Like, we're still challenged with this. I mean, we've been challenged with this so long ago, and even to this day, we're kind of stuck in the same place. So we just want you to know that you're not alone through this journey, that we empathize. We are here with you. We're here for you. So if you ever feel like you're alone, go to RevOps Co-ops, Slack us, DM us. We could have a RevOps rant. So yeah, we hope this was really helpful.
Awesome. Thanks both of you. That was an amazing event. And like we said in the chat, as David said, recording will be available on our website. And we will also be doing follow-ups. And I think that given the information we had here, Jasmine and Damar would love to do a follow-up, maybe get something on paper, a blog or something following up on this, because I know this is a hot button topic that we see in the community all the time, and I think a lot of people would get a lot of value from. So we'll definitely look on working on that. But thank you everybody for coming in. If you're not a member of the RevOps Co-op, go ahead. We dropped a link in the chat. You can also go to the website, revopscoop.com, and join there. We do events like these almost every single week. So looking forward to seeing everybody back. And again, thank you, Jasmine and Damar. A pleasure always having you and always talking, and looking forward to having you in the next one. I hope everybody has a good rest of your week, and we will see you again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dylan.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.